adult Sunday school leader. I am recording this on Wednesday, which is Valentine's Day, and so I hope you're having a great day. As we look ahead for this coming Sunday, let's see what we've got coming up. Remember, we're in the unit entitled Made for Something More. We're in week 5 entitled I Am Just Passing Through, out of 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 through 17. And the point of the lesson is that our lives in this world should reflect our eternal home. So we're going to pick up this week where we left off in 1 Peter chapter 2. Last week's lesson ended in verse 10, so we're going to start in verse 11 this week. Now I want to tell you about 2 different trips I've taken. One was a vacation and one was a mission trip. Vacation was about 30 years ago. It was 10 days long. We traveled from Arkansas back to my mom's hometown in western North Carolina. We traveled then down through South Carolina and Georgia and Florida. We traveled on the 1A1 coastal highway there in Florida, took a ferry, celebrated my wife's 30th birthday on the road. We ended up in Orlando because I was a best man at my friend's wedding down there. And of course, while there, took the family to Disney World. And despite having a little bit of car trouble, all in all, it was a pretty good vacation. Now, I enjoyed that vacation very much, but it wasn't home. We had a lot of fun experiences, but I still longed for my bed. You know, there's something about being in your own bed and your own shower. You know what your shower water pressure is, and that's what I like. And it's the other places, the motels and stuff, was either too weak shower pressure or way too strong. So anyway, you know what I'm talking about. It's fun, but it's not your home. Now let me tell you about another trip. Actually, 3 different ones. I've been to Haiti 3 times now. And, you know, we moved, as a child, I moved here to Arkansas in 1974 from Kansas. And I thought the humidity was bad here. Nothing compared to what it's like in Haiti. It's always hot. Southeast Arkansas has nothing on the humidity of Haiti. No air conditioning, except at night. We were able to get air conditioning at night. Very, very poor country. In fact, it's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And you drive through Port-au-Prince, and, you know, we've seen litter here, but this was not litter. This was trash. Heaps of trash in the street with wild animals running through it. It was just nothing like I had ever seen before. But here's the thing. Even though I knew I was in the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, I knew I was only there for a week. That at the end of that 7 days, I was getting on an airplane that had air conditioning, the door was going to shut, and in less than 12 hours, I was going to be back in my bed in Arkansas. So as believers, whether we are really comfortable and we're enjoying this life, or barely just getting by and we're suffering tremendously, we need to remember this world is not our home. We're just a passing through, like that old gospel song says. This is echoed in Philippians chapter 3, verse 20, where Paul says our citizenship is in heaven. We're living here on earth, but our citizenship as believers is in heaven. Now, Peter states in verse 11 of our text that as strangers, as exiles, as sojourners, that we are to abstain from sinful desires. And certain translations may say fleshly desires. Now, that's not just a sexual thing that we need to think about, those fleshly desires. As we look at Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 through 21, you need to read and see what that says, because it echoes kind of what's being said here. Galatians chapter 5. Hey, if you want to tell your class an easy way to learn Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians, because sometimes those get mixed up in the order, just think GEPC, or Girls Eat Potato Chips. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. Anyway, just a little hint there for you. Right, Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 through 21 says, now the works of the flesh, okay, that's the desires of the flesh, are obvious. Sexual immorality, of course, that's up there, number 1. Moral impurity, promiscuity, okay, we know what all that is. Idolatry, sorcery, hatred, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish ambitions, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and anything similar. So Paul gives a little more detail here as to what those sinful fleshly desires are. See, it's like I said, the lust of the flesh, or those fleshly desires, just is not limited to sexual type of sins. It's fleshly desires as opposed to the spirit flesh versus spirit. And so the things that are opposed to or the opposite of God and his character, which I just listed, all those there in Galatians chapter 5, we are to avoid or to abstain or flee from those attitudes and actions. Now, there was a spiritual reason to avoid these things, because it tells us in verse 11 there in 1 Peter that those things wage war against the soul, but also as a witness to other people, so that no one would have any negative thing to say about the believers. And if they did, it would be slander. It would be untrue. Now, that's true today for Christians, isn't it? Christians are walking advertisements for Christianity, for their local church, whether that's good or bad. Now, in verse 12, we see this phrase, day of visitation. I'm going to tell you, be honest with you, have no idea what that means. Right? To me, there's no clear interpretation. As I read different commentaries, I get all kinds of different interpretations as to what that means. It could be the day of the Lord that Peter refers to in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. It could refer to the day of judgment, could refer to the day of salvation, it could refer to when Christians are brought to trial and that they wouldn't have anything bad to say against them. All kinds of interpretations here. Now, hear me out on this. While I believe all Scripture is important, it's vital, right? It's true. You know, we can take that phrase out, the day of visitation, and just think of it like this. Live your life the way that where nobody has anything bad to say against you, okay? Have integrity and character so that we should live our lives that where slanderers don't have a leg to stand on, okay? All right, let's look on down to verses 13 through 15. Be obedient to authority. You know, that's something we try to hammer into our children since we are the authority. But we need to do that. We need to be obedient to authority for the same reasons. Verses 16 and 17. Don't use your freedom for a cloak of evil. What do you mean? What does that mean? Why would we do that? Well, any freedom can be perverted. All right, we think spiritually. In fact, Paul addresses this. We're given grace, but that grace is not a license to sin. Right? Should I sin more? God forbid, he says. No. We have the freedom of speech in America, but that freedom of speech can be perverted to become hate speech, hateful speech, slanderous speech. So we're not to use our freedom for a cloak of evil. Now we get down to verse 16, into verse 16, and it says that we are God's slaves. You know, we are either slaves to sin or we're slaves to God. As that Nobel Prize winning guy Bob Dylan sang in 1979, you gotta serve somebody. You remember how those lyrics go? But you're going to have to serve somebody. Yes, indeed, you're going to have to serve somebody. Well, it may be the devil or it may be the Lord, but you're going to have to serve somebody. So that's true. Bob Dylan sang it, and it reflects what the Bible says as well. We serve either sin and self or we serve the Lord. Now, in verse 17, it leaves us with 4 different thoughts here. We're to honor everyone. Honor, what does that mean? It means show respect to everyone, regardless of class, regardless if you like them or not, regardless if they are in your political party or not, regardless if they are mean to you or not. Honor everyone. Love the brothers and sisters. That's the second thing he tells us there. What does John 13:35 tell us? That by this all will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. He tells us also to fear God. What does Proverbs 9:10 say? Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You know, fear the Lord. Just, don't take his commands lightly. Obey them. And then he takes the same thing he said first, honor everyone, and he specifically narrows that down to a person. Honor the emperor. Okay? In our case, it would be honor the president. Honor those folks in authority over you. Yes, everyone includes the emperor. And at that time, who's the emperor? Nero. Terrible, terrible persecutor of Christians. So we need to honor our leaders. We don't have to agree with them. We don't have to vote for them. We need to honor them, though, and honor that position. You know, many of my Facebook friends are in one of 2 camps. They either come down on Obama and the Democratic Party is the Antichrist, or Trump and the Republican Party is the Antichrist. Terrible, terrible things posted in fake news on both sides, posted. This is not honoring. This is not honoring. This is stirring up stuff. Okay, that's not what we're supposed to do. Well, let me leave you with this final thought. We lived in Kansas. It was my first church job, my first church position. We lived in Liberal, Kansas for 5 years. And for about 2 of those years or so, my daughter, who was about 15, 16 at the time, she was a Dorothy. She was a Dorothy at Dorothy's House in the Wizard of Oz Museum. Of course, being there in Kansas, trying to capitalize on that, they had a little museum there, and so the tour guides would dress up. They had young teenage girls dress up as Dorothy in the blue check dresses and the red ruby slippers and give tours. Remember the line that was made famous by Judy Garland in that movie. There's no place like what? No place like home. Remember, this world is not our home. We're just passing through. So if you're enjoying life, if you love your life, everything's going great for you, just remember, don't hold on to it. Don't get too comfortable. And then on the flip side, if life is so tough you just don't think you can take it, if just disaster after tribulation comes your way, just remember that little bit of time that we have on earth is nothing compared to the eternity we can have with Christ in heaven. All right, that's all I got for you this week. Hope you have a great, great Sunday school lesson.